the unshakable throne. For more than 70 years, the United States sat atop the world order like a king upon a high throne. From the ashes of World War II, it had risen unmatched, its industries humming, its military sprawling across oceans, its currency woven into the fabric of global trade. Every major decision, from oil deals to peace treaties, seemed to pass through Washington. But power is not permanent. History is littered with empires that believed themselves eternal. Rome, the Ottomans, the British Empire. Each fell not in a single dramatic blow, but in a series of small cracks, the kind that form quietly while the rulers still think themselves invincible. Enter the disruptor.
I, Donald John Trump.
In January 2017, the world watched as Donald J. Trump placed his hand on the Bible and swore the oath of office. He arrived in Washington as a disruptor, a man who promised to tear down the old order and build a new one with America first, stamped across every policy. His supporters believed this was the boldness the country needed. His critics feared it was the arrogance that could undo decades of careful diplomacy. Trump was not a student of subtlety. He preferred deals made in the glare of cameras, insults hurled without hesitation, and threats delivered like ultimatums. To him, the world was a marketplace, and America, the toughest negotiator in the room. If rivals didn't give in, he would force their hand with tariffs, sanctions, and sheer political pressure. The first battle, China. The first and fiercest front was China. Trump accused Beijing of theft, stealing American technology, manipulating its currency, and gutting US manufacturing. His answer was swift. Billions of dollars in tariffs, a trade war fought in full public view. Washington believed China's export-driven economy would crumble under the pressure. Instead, Beijing adapted. Chinese factories sought new buyers. Tech firms accelerated innovation to replace American components. Trade deals with Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America expanded. For every American door that slammed shut, another opened elsewhere. The dragon was wounded, but it was also learning to fight without the United States. The Russian pivot. In Moscow, Vladimir Putin played a longer game. The world saw strange flashes of warmth between Trump and Putin, awkward smiles at summits, carefully chosen words in press conferences. Yet beneath the optics, sanctions continued to bite at Russia's energy and financial sectors. To the Kremlin, it was proof that Washington's charm could turn to hostility overnight. And so Russia pivoted. Moscow signed defense agreements with Beijing, deepened joint military exercises, and explored new trade in energy not with the West, but with its eastern neighbor. Two historical rivals, once suspicious of each other, began to find common cause. India's fractured friendship. For years, US strategists dreamed of India as the perfect counterweight to China's rise. But that delicate courtship shattered when Trump imposed tariffs on Indian goods and tightened visa rules affecting Indian tech workers. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government, proud and fiercely independent, did not take well to being strong-armed. Quietly, India turned to Moscow for energy deals and defense purchases. Even the possibility of strategic dialogue with Beijing, once unthinkable, began to surface in back channels. Trump had not lost India entirely, but the trust was fractured. And in geopolitics, trust is often more valuable than any treaty. Brazil's break. In South America, Brazil had long balanced its relationship with the United States, sometimes as a partner, sometimes as a critic. Under Trump, that balance collapsed. Disputes over trade, coupled with Washington's retreat from climate agreements, left Brasilia looking for new economic lifelines. China seized the opportunity, flooded Brazil with investment in infrastructure, agriculture, and technology. By the time Washington realized the scale of Beijing's presence, Brazil's trade with China had already outpaced its trade with the United States. The alliance of the unaligned. By 2020, the four nations Russia, China, India, and Brazil found themselves bound by a shared frustration with Washington. Under the BRICS banner, they moved from polite cooperation to strategic alignment. Their economies represented nearly half of the world's people and a growing share of its wealth. They began bypassing the US dollar in trade, striking energy deals in local currencies, and collaborating on defense technology. What began as a loose economic bloc was evolving into a counterweight to the very world order America had built. The fall of the American century. The United States had faced rivals before the Soviet Union, radical movements, terrorist networks, but never a coalition of major powers acting in unison. And unlike past enemies, these nations were not weak states to be contained. They were giants, each with its own resources, influence, and ambitions. Trump had promised to make America stronger. Yet in pushing so hard to dominate, he had driven the world's largest nations into each other's arms. The American century, which had begun in 1945, now faced a challenge unlike any before. Historians may one day debate whether this was an inevitable shift in global power or a preventable miscalculation. But for those watching in real time, the shift was undeniable. The throne at the top of the world no longer looked unshakable. The cracks had spread, and somewhere in the silence between state dinners and press conferences, the empire's clock ticked on.